I was thinking about this morning, this false dichotomy between, being a hardcore Bitcoiner and being like a new Bitcoiner that's like not all about the things that, the standard Bitcoiner, libertarian, freedom money mindset. I have come to this sort of emerging idea that I am still, for sure, a Bitcoin maximalist in all conceivable ways. I think that it's the best money ever. I recommend self-custody and, taking charge of your private keys and all of that kind of stuff. But I will say that my mind has begun to change over the last year, primarily because a few videos ago, some of you guys have watched my video about the next 100 million users, and I think that as a Bitcoin community, that's a worthy idea for us to really home in on, because our language and our attitudes, the phraseology that we use as Bitcoiners can tend to be kind of insular, and I think that's a bad thing. I think that's a bad thing because as I've begun to understand sort of next phase of adoption, just going back to the video that I did, basically around the presentation that David Bailey gave at the Adopting Bitcoin conference last year, talking about, the first 15% early adopters of any new technology are a very, very different type of person, a very, very different type of mindset than the people that come in the first, what he calls the early majority phase, which is kind of like the next, I don't even know the percentages. But the point is that I see this happening, and I see that the ETFs are, like a big magnet to getting people into Bitcoin. Now, I know the classic arguments. I know I've worked with Bitcoiners and I'm around Bitcoiners all the time. And, and I agree, like, if you don't hold your keys, not your coins. But the thing that we have to understand as Bitcoiners is we have to understand that not everybody that gets into Bitcoin is really going to ever won't be interested in doing that. Now, we can argue all the time for 6102 attacks, and we can argue all the time for, their funds being confiscated and scams. That's going to be kind of the price of entry for some people. That's going to be the thing. Unfortunately, they're going to have to go through some pain to recognize that, not your keys, not your coins. So what I'm trying to do with this, series of conversations that I'm having with you guys really is kind of, like I've said, bring together the traditional personal finance and FIRE movements into Bitcoin. And I think that, with FIRE in particular, one of the, most important and attractive instruments by which they can start to get into Bitcoin are these ETFs. And they're, two different kinds of ETFs that you can think of. One, there's the just the value ETFs where it's tracking with the price of Bitcoin. That would be like IBIT and FBTC and VanEck. I think there are about 11 of those here in the US. This new sort of class of ETFs are dividend paying or distribution paying ETFs, where you're tracking the increase in the asset value, but you're also realizing, like in the case of BTCI, you're realizing monthly income off of that. So I know that, where my wife and I are is, I would consider myself somewhat semi-early retired. I'm definitely not totally retired, but we are interested in, we've got our, Bitcoin savings account, Bitcoin high yield savings account, sort of like our main, savings in on-chain Bitcoin. And then we had these ETFs, and we're doing an experiment right now, which I would invite you guys to follow along. And experimenting with BTCI. I also got kind of a bead on using STRC, I guess it's called Strike. That's a strategy ETF. So I'm interested in taking, peeling off a part of our assets, which, we do have assets that are sort of trapped in the legacy system, you might say. But like, hey, how can we move from this mindset of, all right, well, we're waiting for the day for the number to go up. We're waiting for Bitcoin to go to $1 million before we start using it. I just think that's a think it's a really myopic way of looking at things. And I think that another aspect that us as traditional Bitcoiners have to understand is that, you know, one of our core values is low time preference. But I think part of this next wave of, you know, the early majority that are coming into Bitcoin don't have a low time preference. They may have a medium to high time preference, meaning that, hey, they want their cake and eat it too. They want to take advantage of the number go up. But they want to start harvesting Bitcoin's energy now. And so I think that, you know, having been around really, you know, more traditional classic Bitcoiners over this past year, that seed that this, you know, next 100 million users planted in my head over the past year has really borne a lot of fruit. It's been kind of a latent thing. I haven't really thought about it all that much. It's just been kind of sitting in the back of my head. And then I've started following a few, try to be more welcoming, to try to take into account different mindsets and the idea that, you know, a lot of people are not going to see things the way that we see them. So like I said, I'm planning on doing a little bit more of a thorough kind of thought process with this, you know, later on this week. So if you're into this kind of thing, you're trying to figure out Bitcoin, you're trying to amalgamate it with, it's my 50 cent word for, you know, enmesh it together with your personal finances, and especially if you're in the FIRE movement, like this video, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.